All right, how you guys doing today? Welcome back. Today we're going to continue on with triangles. However, instead of finding angles of a triangle, we are actually today going to be finding sides of a triangle. And we are going to do that by using a very ancient theorem developed a long time ago named the Pythagorean theorem. Now, the Pythagorean theorem is going to help us find sides of a triangle. However, it is very important to know that this only works with right triangles. So if you don't have a right triangle, we have to use other things to find the side length of them. But today we're going to focus on how we can find sides of a right triangle by using what's called the Pythagorean theorem. Now, before we get started, it is important to understand a little bit of vocabulary that goes along with right triangles. You can tell that it's a right triangle if you look at either one of these by looking at the little square in one of the corners. That indicates to you that you have a 90-degree angle. Now, anytime you have a right triangle, the two sides that are touching your right angle in this left triangle are 6 and 8-inch side. Those are referred to as the legs of a triangle. And traditionally in a triangle, we label those sides A and B. So in our particular example, A is 6 and B is 8. That A and B can be flipped around, so we could easily say that A is 8 and B is 6. Now, our side that's diagonal, that's across from our right angle, it will always be our longest side. In this case, we have an X there. That's what we call our hypotenuse. So that is our longest side of a right triangle is the hypotenuse. And we will generally label the hypotenuse with the letter C. So when you have a right triangle, your legs are going to be A and B. Your hypotenuse is going to be C. Now, to find the missing side, in this case we're trying to find our hypotenuse, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. And here's what the Pythagorean theorem says. It says A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. So basically, what we're going to do is we're just going to substitute our values that we know in for A, B, and C, and then try and solve. So in our example here on the left, we know that A is 6, so it's going to be 6 squared. We know that B is 8, so that's going to be 8 squared. And we know that C is X, so that's going to be X squared. And so now we're just going to try and solve. We know that 6 squared is 36. We know that 8 squared is 64. That's equal to X squared. 36 plus 64 is equal to 100, equals X squared. And to get rid of a squared, we know that we need to take the square root. So we're going to take the square root of 100, and we're going to get that X is equal to 10. Or in this case, we should say 10 inches. Now, you may be asking yourself the question, do we need to put plus or minus 10? Because I've taught you many times that when we take the square root, we use the positive and negative. In this case, hopefully you know this answer already, but we're only going to be talking about the positive because our length of a side cannot be a negative. We would never say the length of a side of a triangle is a negative 10 inches. So it's just going to be 10 inches. All right, hopefully that made sense. Let's do this example off to the right. It's a little bit different because we're going to be finding something slightly different. So let me just erase some of this here. All right, so in this case, my legs are 8 right here. I'll call that A. And I've got this missing side. I didn't put a letter here. We'll call this B. So we're going to be trying to find B. And my hypotenuse over here is going to be 12. So we're going to use the same formula, But when we solve, it's going to be slightly different, nothing that we can't handle. So again, our Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. My a is 8. I don't know what my b is, so I'm just going to keep that as b. So I've got 8 squared plus b squared. And over here, my c is 12 squared. All right, so now I'm just going to solve. 8 squared is 64. I don't know what b squared is. 12 squared is 144. Now, a little bit more difficult this time. Not too much more difficult, but one more step because we're finding a leg instead of the hypotenuse. I'm going to subtract 64 on both sides. So I get b squared is equal to 80. And then I'm going to take the square root. And you will find oftentimes when we do Pythagorean theorem, it's not going to be the nicest of numbers. Generally, we will round to the nearest tenth or the nearest hundredth. In this case, I believe we're going to get 8.94 or somewhere in that realm. So I'll call it 8.9 feet. And that's going to be the length of my B. Little check for yourself. Whenever you're finding A or B, your answer should definitely be less than your C, which in this case you can tell 8.9 is less than 12. On the contrary, if you're finding C, like this triangle on the left, where we got an answer of 10, your answer should be bigger than both A and B. All right, hopefully you guys found that helpful. I don't want to throw too much more at you, but hopefully you find this relatively easy to work through. Try the practice problems today and let me know if you have any questions.